Thank you very much. Now we're heading out to sea now to hear how Sea6 Energy are tapping the ocean's biomass for industrial applications. And to tell you all about it, we have Ludwig Schmidtchen. Ludwig.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. And I would like to give you an introduction at Sea6, what we are doing, and how seaweed and the ocean's biomass might be helpful to go from fossil-based to bio-based. Because the big question, if we want to move away from fossil-based material, is what is the biomass we want to use? So where we started is we are having a certain amount of fossil-based materials being used. And of course, we can do a lot of electric cars and all other stuff to replace the fossil fuels in mobility, for example. But a certain share, we simply need the carbon. So that's the non-electrifiable demand. And where should the biomass come from? We have our food, which is growing, the soil is degrading, the land area is shrinking, we need fresh water. So a lot of challenges only to get the food to feed the people, the growing amount of people on the world. An alternative to this is the seaweed. So why is it an alternative? Here on the map we see the red color where we have the most sunlight. And for biomass and plants, we need a lot of sunlight to grow because it's mainly sunlight, the solar energy, some nutrients and water. In the ocean, there's plenty of water. So the seaweed just needs sunlight, the water, the nutrients available in the ocean. So the best position is somewhere in the tropics. I've been in the seaweed industry also here in Europe for some time, and growing seaweeds in Northern Europe is simply challenging due to the geographic location. In the tropics, it's different. And there, we need only about 1% of the ocean area to grow the amount of seaweed containing the carbon which is required to replace the fossil-based materials. So the potential is huge, but how to go from the potential to realization? Next. Yeah. The advantage with the tropical seaweed is that we can grow it the whole year around. We have just a growth cycle of about 45 days, and there we're creating a huge continuous supply of biomass, which is extremely important for industrial application. Compared to Europe, here we can do 2-3 harvests maybe a year, but half of the year, all the production is just sitting around and idle, nothing to do, because we don't have any fresh biomass. In the tropics, that's different, and this gives you the huge potential to create an industrial feedstock for all those applications. How the seaweed cultivation is done, it's extremely manual. So you had small farmers manually attaching the seaweed to the ropes, bringing it out to the ocean, taking care of the seaweed while growth, afterwards collecting it, removing the seaweed manually. So very low productivity, but it's how the seaweed industry was growing and was done for the last decades, simply to feed the demand of the food and pharmaceutical industry, basically. How Sea6 is doing it? Sea6 started with the idea of creating what is known in agriculture, industrial agriculture, since a lot of decades, also for the ocean. And last year, our first 1 square kilometer seaweed farm was set up in Indonesia and Lombok, which is the blueprint, the technology showcase, how to build such a large farm, the infrastructure, and also how to operate it. To have our sea combine, which is basically a tractor on the sea, to do the seeding and the harvest of the seaweed without a lot of manual work. And what does this do? Altogether, the whole seaweed infrastructure, the technology, also the data monitoring, the strain development, all this together brings us the ability to create this unique industrial feedstock of seaweed. And with this feedstock, we are able to bring down the pricing. So we see here the current price of manually cultivated seaweed, which is relatively high and okay for pharmaceutical and special food ingredients, like alginate, carrageenan, and agar, some of you might know. But for other applications, where you need bigger volumes at lower price, the seaweed is not suitable anymore. With the seaweed Sea6 ocean farming technology, we are able to reduce the price already significantly. So we can go into agri-inputs, biostimulants, which is our main product today, also some bulk food and feed ingredients, and pretty new, also biodegradable plastic applications. So where can we replace fossil-based plastic materials with our seaweed materials? On the longer term, when those applications are developing and scaling, we will also be able to hit a price range where it's possible to replace the carbon for sustainable chemicals and biofuels coming from seaweed. Here you just have an overview of what we are doing at Sea6. So we are doing all the crop science, the data analytics, and the ocean farming to get this proprietary seaweed feedstock. And then we are converting it into industrial intermediates, mainly for plant health with our biostimulants today, and the food ingredients, pretty new business in the biomaterials, where we are also here today, and on a longer term feedstock for biorefinery and platform chemicals. Why do you want tailor-made intermediates from seaweed? So what's the advantage? First, the carbon footprint. Growing 1 ton of dry biomass of seaweed, we are capturing about 768 kilograms of carbon, and there already the emissions for growing the seaweed are already deducted. So that's the net carbon capture of this biomass. Then we do not compete with any food supply, arable land or fresh water. That's great. In terms of chemical properties, it's a bunch. The seaweed is a mixture of different composition, different chemical structures. In general, it's very hydrophilic, so it loves water, which is great for oil and grease resistant properties, for example. It's easily biodegradable in all kind of environments, mainly sulfated polysaccharides and about 20% of carbon in the biomass. Also extremely important, we can scale it. So if today we can produce a certain amount, but we have the blueprint of our seaweed cultivation, so we can produce 1,000, 10,000 or even more depending on the demand. And doing this in an extremely cost competitive way to fossil-based materials. Yeah, what kind of applications are we looking at today with this material? Currently we have the Cara coat. I will come to this later. This is our coating material. Then we are looking into how can you bring seaweed into plastic applications to reduce the carbon footprint. We are exploring ideas and opportunities how to bring seaweed into paper applications, or that's the reason why we are here. If you have any ideas what you would like to do with the seaweed, what kind of tailor-made intermediate from seaweed would you like for your application, then we are happy to discuss this and to look if we can find something and develop something together. The current product, Cara coat, you see it here, is a material you can use to create water dispersions for coating applications, and this offers you extremely good oil and grease resistance. With, you can see here, without the Cara coat, you quickly see oil and grease penetrating. With Cara coat, there's no issue. Then on the right side, you see this feedstock. That's our dried seaweed flakes, a general material we can then process into all different kind of materials depending on your needs. On the coating material, also here in the audience, a colleague from Stahl, we are working with Viborg Graphics by Stahl on this topic of coating. So we are providing our tailor-made intermediate because we know what to do on the seaweed cultivation and seaweed processing side, but we are not the coating expert. So we are happy to work with companies who are experts in their field, and with Viborg Graphics by Stahl, that's extremely the coating topic for paper and cardboard. We are providing our raw materials, our tailor-made intermediates, to develop industrial, scalable, and high-performance solutions. How can we work together? So either one of the materials we showed is interesting to you and we can discuss how you would also be interested to explore it, or you have some new ideas how to use seaweed biomass for your application and to create tailor-made intermediates out of it. Or if you are looking into investments for seaweed or general biomass generation and processing, we are also happy to talk. Thank you.